I really just want to speak to everybody as American citizens right now.
Sure.
We are not in a world where it's Republican versus Democrat, the way that people have historically understood that to be. We're in a different world now. We're in a world where what people who self-identify as MAGA Republicans, who are as far away from the Republican Party of Ronald Reagan as you can possibly be. And there are about 35, maybe 30 to 35% of America that thinks like that.
Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast focused on incredibly talented people who've dedicated themselves to public service when their country and communities needed it the most. I'm Ryan Coonerty. Along with Debbie Cox Bultan of the NewDEAL, I'm lucky enough to be your co-host. The NewDEAL is an organization that supports the next generation of American leaders. Check out newdealleaders.org to find out more.
In today's episode, I speak with the Honorable Mitch Landrieu, who served as a Louisiana state legislator, lieutenant governor, and longtime mayor of New Orleans, as well as in the Biden administration overseeing the Infrastructure Act implementation. Mayor Landrieu talks about the current political moment, how we got here, and what it'll take to move us forward, emphasizing the question before us is not about left, right, and center. It's about coming together as Americans to fight autocracy. He brings his experience rebuilding his city post-Katrina and in the federal government to give advice about making government work well and the need to embrace radical reform at speed to deliver results. He also talks about why the work of state and local leaders around the country is so vitally important, and it gives him hope. I hope you enjoy. Mitch Landrieu, welcome to An Honorable Profession.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm so looking forward to this conversation. The world is topsy-turvy. You have been doing a lot of things successfully in politics and government for a long time, state, local, federal level. So excited to get your perspective. I wanted to start with maybe just a real 30,000 foot question. I think, we met back when I was at the DLC 30 years ago. Times we're in are completely unprecedented. And so, people are scared. People are scared about the economic hardships. They're scared about what's going on in Iran, about the chaos in their streets with immigration enforcement. Just how do you think of where we are at this moment? And how do you think about for yourself where you can make the most impact or do good right now? How do you navigate on a daily basis what's all around us?
Well, those are three very big questions. So
That's fair.
One of them is a 30,000 foot view of where we see ourselves now. You can answer that question in two ways. You can answer it historically, or you can answer it in the immediacy of the moment that we're in. And then where you can do the greatest good in the shortest period of time. So let me take them one at a time.
Sounds good.
Because we're all in the middle of like raw political moments right now, we have a tendency to just focus on, for example, Trump and what his team is doing to destroy the world as quickly as they can. And I need to stop them. That's important. But I think it's important really as we talk about where we think we might go, which is the next big discussion. Where are we going and what comes next, which is what we need to focus on. Is how we got where we are and why are we here and what's happening in the moment. So remember, for people that are a little bit younger than we are, that when Reagan came into office, after Nixon and Carter, that kind of era, there were what we would now call reasonable fights going on about what's conservative and what's liberal, what's big, what's small, what the government should do, what it shouldn't do. But it was within a fairly well-defined framework where everybody assumed that the guardrails of the Constitution actually existed. There were three branches of government. There were federal, state, and local authorities. Everybody really kind of obeyed the rule of law. And when you got out of hand, there was a legal system that actually got everybody back where they needed to be. And the country was, notwithstanding some upsets from 1970 pretty much through 2000, in relatively good shape with hiccups. We had the Iraq war in the early 90s. But for the most part, macro level, the economy was growing. But what was happening at that point in time that people weren't paying much attention to was the beginning alienation between working class folks and the wealthy, and watching accumulated wealth and the consolidation of power actually take place, which did not really fully manifest itself until after the 2009 recession and maybe the election of Donald Trump. So for 50 years, although the country was seemingly in relative peace, our country, until 9/11 hit, when that really kind of threw everybody upside down. And we got into another war in Iraq and then, of course, Afghanistan. And then Katrina hit, which really unnerved people about the possibility that a great American city could be lost. Then we had the Great Recession, which people felt in very large measure was an unfair recovery, given who got hurt and who got paid. While that was happening, because of trade, without us balancing how to rebuild communities, there was a lot of resentment being built up over time about hollowing out manufacturing in America. And of course, we got into this combustible moment that produced the election of Donald Trump. And while he didn't cause it all, he certainly noticed it. And instead of using his power to bring people together, it's very clear now, or it should be to everybody. And it's clear to Tucker Carlson, and it's clear to the folks that used to be big megaphones on the right, that Donald Trump has now started to do things that are just unfathomable for the right and for the left. And so it takes us to the moment, the immediate political moment that we're in, or at least governing moment, where we have a president, the first time in American history, when we've actually put a huge amount of power in the hands of a madman. And I think the public's coming to see that, because I don't know when this is going to be aired, but 2 nights ago, the president said that he was going to use the power that the people of America gave him to basically eliminate, destroy an entire civilization. That civilization would be the country of what used to be called Persia, which is now called Iran, which is a 6,000-year-old civilization that has 100 million people in it. Because that he's in a fight, as maybe we should be, with a theocracy that's been governing a country that's had a dagger at the throat of America for the past 47 years. But the last 5 presidents have figured out a better way to contain them. And now we're in this really weird moment where people actually don't know what the heck is going on. Now, this is the culmination of an insane 9 months of getting into office, trying to put your enemies in jail, tearing down a third of the White House, invading another country, wanting to take over Greenland, waking up one day and saying the sky is red, and the next day and saying the sky is blue. So everybody, even Trump supporters, are feeling very unsettled about the moment that we're in. And it doesn't seem like all of the guardrails that have normally been in place have been particularly apt to corral what feels like is going to be a more chaotic run in the near future. And in the near future, I mean through 2028, or the moment that Donald Trump is forced to leave office because of the Constitution. And I think everybody is trying to figure out what in the heck they're supposed to do, at least on the federal level, in the political arena, to stop the dysfunction and the destruction of the guardrails of the way America is supposed to work, in hopes of giving time for other elected officials in the country to catch up to hiring new leaders to restore balance, and then to start really thinking about what the future of America is going to look like, which will be very different from the past, because we're not going back.
Yeah. No, I agree with all of that. I mean, I think it was inherent what you said to some extent, but also one of the real reasons we're here is also this idea that people felt like government wasn't working for them, and that they were looking for something different, somebody that was going to said they were going to do things differently. Not that they signed up for what they got, but when I think about kind of your career and your very successful career as really a bridge builder, both figuratively and literally. I think about what you did after Katrina in New Orleans as mayor to rebuild that city, and then, of course, to work with President Biden on the infrastructure implementation during the Biden administration. You know a lot about how we make government work well. Do you agree that that's kind of something that we are going to have to do if we're going to come in and take over and be Democrats who could be successful again? We've got to show them that we believe in government and it actually can deliver for people.
Well, let me again, if you don't mind, I know this is with targeting audience as Democrats, but I really just want to speak to everybody as American citizens right now.
Sure.
We are not in a world where it's Republican versus Democrat, the way that people have historically understood that to be. We're in a different world now. We're in a world where with people who self-identify as MAGA Republicans, who are as far away from the Republican Party of Ronald Reagan as you can possibly be. And there are about 35, maybe 30 to 35% of America that thinks like that. There's another, I don't know, 15 to 17% of people who are persuadable about how government's supposed to work, or how the private sector is supposed to work, and what the relationship is between the public and the private sector. But that's not the Republican Party anymore. And I think that the argument at the moment, right now, the big argument is not, are you left or are you right? It's, do you believe that we're better together? Or do you think that some of us are better than others by virtue of what we look like when we're born? This idea that all of us are created equal, which of course is the bedrock of democracy and the cornerstone of our republic, that is not a widely accepted as it was many, many years ago. There is a strain that is finding voice in the White House through the derivative power of this president, voiced through people like Stephen Miller and the vice president, who does not believe in the idea of us being a creedal nation. He gave a speech about this. The creed of our nation is that we are all endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we all come to the table of democracy as equal, irrespective of your race, your creed, your color, or your nation of origin. That is our creed. That is our promise to each other. The covenant that we have made to each other, that has been broken in large measure, is that every generation would do better than parents if they worked hard. So those are two competing problems. But there is a strain, just to be clear about this, which is why the vice president was in Hungary the other day supporting Viktor Orban, who is an autocrat. So the big fight now is, are you for autocracy or are you for democracy? Are you for oppression? Or are you for liberty and freedom? That's really the big fight. Now, within that fight, and how you get to who's supposed to win that fight, comes the political structure that we can only define as Republicans and Democrats. But be clear about this. There are many independents and Republicans today who are going, I can't be with Trump anymore. I just can't do that thing. And I'm trying to find something new. All right. So that's point one. Now, because we only really have two manageable parties, that you can accuse any of us of being manageable. If the Democrats are hearing the American people say, I gave Donald Trump power. He's abused that power. He's used it to self-enrich. He's used it to punish his enemies. He's used it to destroy things. What are you going to do with it if I give it to you? Okay. And so I think in that framework, I think Democrats do have to think about a lot of things. One of them is this: if you believe in government, if you believe that governments can be an active agent for change, if you believe that we have a responsibility to make government work for everybody, partnership, by the way, with everybody else, which is a critically important point, then you should make sure that we are the ones who are against waste, against fraud, against abuse, against duplication, against corruption, and that government is rightly audited and rightly organized, not bigger than it has to be, and not smaller than is necessary to achieve the common good that everybody should have access to. So I am, in my role I was a legislator, I was an executive as a lieutenant governor because I oversaw a massive department. I clearly was an executive when I was the mayor of New Orleans and the commander of our police department, and I had to rebuild the city after Katrina and Rita and Ike and Gustav and the national recession, BP oil spill. And then, of course, I was honored by President Biden to be in charge of rebuilding the country. And before I left the White House, we had 73,000 projects that had been funded. And so I have been in the business of believing that because we're better together, it's always good to try to find common ground, which essentially means that you have to compromise and take everything that you want. And that when you build things, you have to build them quickly, or as quickly as you can, so that people can see the benefit of their tax dollars at work. And Democrats, I think, have been branded a little bit falsely, not completely so, because we're not in control of everything, and we're not in control of anything by ourselves. Nothing really gets built and nothing really gets done without the government, the private sector, the not-for-profit sector, the faith-based sector, and federal, state, and local governments. You have all of those things lined up at once. There's nothing that you cannot do. Nothing. when things in my life, in the times that I have served, when I was in partnership with everybody rebuilding the city of New Orleans, it's because everybody was working together. We had a clear vision. We had a plan. We had resources. We had good leadership. We had good execution, where you would just every day were like, how much faster can you go? So that's what allowed us to rebuild the schools. That's what allowed us to rebuild the playgrounds. I just flew into the fabulous airport that I'm so proud of that we built. $1.1 billion, brand new airport. It's fantastic and a lot of fun. But we have an obligation to make government work well and to make sure that it's honest. Now, I say that I think Democrats get a little bit of an unfair shake because they go, oh, Democrats run the cities. Well, we don't run all the cities. There are 3,000 cities in America. There are a lot of cities that are run by Republican mayors, and all mayors, whether they're Republican or Democrat, have the same exact issues about getting stuff done. There's no Republican or Democratic way to fill a pothole. You just got to get the damn pothole filled. When I got to Washington, I was shocked, honestly, at how broken Washington is. I don't even think Washington knows how broken it is. Like, I said something to somebody once, and they misunderstood what I said. My quote was, and it was intentional, I don't understand how Washington does not work. They thought I said, I don't understand how Washington works. And they said, well, let me try to explain it to you. I said, no. You misunderstood what I said.
That's kind of part of the problem.
It's so complicated. It's so complicated and it's so broken. You can't even figure out where to start sometimes. So I do think, Republican or Democrat, that we need and this is where I am not a builder. This is where I am a constructive destructor. I don't feel a sacred commitment to any particular form or structure. I'm a radical reformer in many, many ways. But the end of my objective is to make a better mousetrap to produce a better product. It's not to destroy the thing. So, for example, I give you two silly examples. One, what Elon Musk tried to do with USAID, that is awful. That is not the way that you meaningfully cut waste, fraud, or abuse out of any kind of agency. Now, just the optics and the reality of having the richest man in the world decimate funding sources for the salvation of poor people that many people died from is just immoral on every level. But as importantly, this idea of taking an axe or a hatchet to any government agency is just silly. And the reason I can speak with such force about this is because when I became mayor of New Orleans in 2010, as I said, after Katrina, Rita, Ike, Gustav, the national recession, the BP oil spill hit 3 weeks before I took over. My city was bankrupt. We could not pay the bills. And I was advised to take the city into bankruptcy. I chose not to do it because lawyers said to me, it's easy to get in bankruptcy, but it's hard to get out of it. And I had been very fiscally disciplined in the legislature. I don't like debt. I like balanced budgets. I like, governing with data, which I think is really important because I think if you can't count it, you kind of can't manage it. So I was a pretty hardcore manager, and I knew that I would make the tough decisions necessary to get us out of bankruptcy. I had to cut $100 million out of a $450 million budget. So I cut 22% of hard dollars out of a budget. Now, think about that. Musk cut 0.1%, and it was just in growth. It wasn't real thing. So I am used to harsh cuts, but we did not do it by cutting off figuratively people's arms and legs and ripping their heart out of the body so that the entity bled to death. That wasn't the idea. What we had to do is we had to go in and we had to make very hard decisions about, one, what was the core function of the city? How many agencies did we have that were supposed to deliver on those promises? Which ones of those were more important than others? How, if we could we cut with a scalpel so that when we got government rightly ordered and the economy came back, it would exactly expand just kind of in a natural way. And that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of patience. And much more importantly, there's no fanfare around it because you can't go take a bow because it just takes a long time. So the discipline of governing well is something that I think is really, really important, which is to say this. I would encourage all people who want to run for office, and in this instance, I'm talking to Democrats, don't be afraid of demanding that government be tight, be efficient, be effective, be fast, be entrepreneurial, be able to move. There's nothing wrong with that. Nobody can defend or should not defend a necessarily big government or a bloated government or a government doesn't work well for the sake of governing. That's just not why we're there. We're there to provide a service. And I think that we have a great opportunity to demonstrate to people, by the way, as many governors and mayors have. And I'll just end with this because I'm defensive about this charge that Democrats can't run things by looking at the statistics of red states versus blue states. And if you go look at most of the red states that are run by governors right now, especially in the southern part of the country, their statistics suck. So they're always blaming the cities, and the cities could go, look, I'm just a city in a state. I'm not the one that does, the state budget. We're not the ones that actually run healthcare or whatever. So why are you, every time a Republican governor criticizes a blue city, they ought to just be pointing a finger at themselves. Yeah. And the stats in some of those states, as many blue state governors will point out to their red state counterpart governors, are not better than the blue state. So I don't want to concede the point just because it's gotten to be a Republican talking point. Having said that, I prided myself on running an honest, effective, efficient government under the most difficult of circumstances in a city that did not have a lot of money and still has a lot of work to do. Now, it wasn't perfect. We made a lot of mistakes, but we tried to govern well, and we believed in the hard work of governing and hiring great people to do smart things and tried to listen to what the people needed and to give it to them the best we could within the confines of a huge amount of tremendous, historic pressure and devastation from climate events that we had.
I hear that, and I totally agree with you about kind of getting a bad rap on governing. I mean, part of the problem, isn't it? And maybe it ties a couple of things you said together. Is getting a message out there about what it is working. Actually, I mean, I think that was you. I think experienced that with the infrastructure work of people just not being aware of what was happening. It kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier about, this should be we've got to band together with everybody, left, right, and center, who agrees that we want a government that works, that we have shared values and all that. Is the problem with kind of telling those stories in part our politics right now, and how do we operate in that?
I think it's both. Some of it is we don't get credit for some of the things that we did, but you can't cry over spilled milk. I mean, look, There are plenty of examples of good things that we do. There are also plenty of examples of how government does not work. I mean, like it really does not function the way that it should for citizens. I do not want to be a defender. All I'm saying is it happens in red and blue. It's not a matter of party. It's a matter of we underfund or we misfund or we haven't organized ourselves in a way going forward. I am not a defender of government generally in the way that it's currently working. I think that it can be revamped. Now, that doesn't mean a lot of times, people will hear that and they'll say, well, he doesn't think that we ought to fund, making sure people can eat. I am not in favor of cut and snap. I think it's a bad idea. I'm in favor of expanding Medicaid. I'm in favor of making sure that everybody has access to healthcare. But what flips you out once you say that is I'm not in favor of creating a bloated system that doesn't give people what it is that they need because they have to wait in line too long or the doors don't open when they're supposed to. I don't think we ought to have people waiting in line for passports for 3 hours because the federal government can't fix that or stand in the TSA lines, which will freak you out. I think that's just bullshit. I think that is not an excuse for poorly performing government. Now, I think the federal government is better performing in more areas than states and local governments, but that it doesn't have to be that way. And the issue here is not right or left or big or small. It's effectiveness and efficiency, irrespective of who happens to be governing at the time. And I just think that we shouldn't give up that issue because we have there are a lot of great things going on all over the country. As a matter of fact, if people are losing hope in the future of the country, go to a town, a city, or a county where people know each other and like each other. You'll see miraculous things going on. This idea that states were laboratories of democracy that de Tocqueville set aside for us, he was right. But it was actually not just states, but towns and countries and cities that are now because we've all gotten bigger and we've grown more. And there's fantastic stuff, going on. just unbelievable stuff and great examples, but you can always be better. And the taxpayers have a right to demand a good return on their investment. That's okay. And if we're the leaders of the cities, you know what? We got to get better.
Yeah.
And you can't ever be good enough.
No, I think that's right. I mean, it's a really good point. I mean, just to take one example of that, we were talking about crime in cities, right? And, and crime is coming down, particularly in democratic cities. A message of, I'm working on it, it's coming down, it's coming down by this percentage is not always the best message to say, because to your point, yes, we're doing a lot of good things, but we got to keep doing it. We're going to get it to zero, right?
The political fight, first of all, one crime is too many. That's one homeless person is too many. That's one person that gets to an emergency room late because the ambulance didn't get there is too many. It's all too many. I mean, so there is no bar except for perfection. That's the thing that we always, whenever we would do something great, whenever we would accomplish something that we were really proud of in my office, I'd be like, okay, that's great. Now we did it. Okay, let's get back out there. And they go, what do you want to do next? I would say better.
Right.
Like what's our goal? Whatever the best person in the country is doing, go find that and do it better than that. Just keep getting better. But you get into a little bit. We can talk about crime for a second. It's as a political issue, it's always been used as a potent weapon. But for example, the facts are important here. When Donald Trump was in office for his first term, crime was high. When Joe Biden took office, because of a lot of things that Biden did and because of COVID, crime started going down. When Donald Trump took office for the first year of his second term, crime had already gone down before he started all this noise about deploying the National Guard and reducing crime. Deploying the National Guard to all these cities didn't have anything to do with long-term crime trends that had gone down. They might claim that it made people feel a little bit better wherever they went, unless they felt really oppressed by the fact that for the first time in history, an American citizen violated the Posse Comitatus Act and demonstrated through intimidation that he could put military assets on the streets of America, which is the wrong thing to do. But there is no evidence that any of those things had anything to do with the long-term trend of murder, for example, going to a 50-year low. That all happened before Donald Trump got in office. And so I think, if they want to have an argument about it, people care about the facts, like about inflation. When Joe Biden took office, inflation was at 9% because of COVID and because supply chains would choke because ships could not get into the ports. It took us 4 years to get that down. When Joe Biden left office, inflation was at 3% or something. So it had gone down. And by the way, it was the fastest decline and it was the highest based on anywhere in the world. So this idea somehow that Trump inherited inflation, he inherited 3%. And now, right now, just because people care about facts, inflation is up. The number of jobs being created is down. Gross domestic product, the growth just went, I think that they came out for the fourth quarter, it was zero. So the economy is not growing. Manufacturing jobs are going away. But they don't tell the truth about that. So one thing I do think we should do in the political world is continue to tell the story about what the facts are. But they're going to keep lying about it because they have a megaphone to do that in their news media, and nobody's checking the facts. And I just would not look. I put cities up against any of them. I think the mayors in America are the best politicians going because they're on the ground, they're accountable, they're at the church, they're at the store, they're at the synagogue, they're at the mosque, they're at the playground, and they have to be accountable every damn day, as they should be. And that is where the hard work of governing well takes place. People in Washington talk a lot, but they don't have responsibility of doing much. And I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way. I'm just saying there's a lot of talking that goes on up there, and it's so far away that most of the governing takes place on the local and the state level. And we should focus our attention there and be thankful and try out new ideas, for the most difficult problems that are plaguing us. And we have many of them.
Yeah. Well, I was going to end, actually, you preempted me. I was going to end because most of the listeners for this podcast are either current or aspiring state and local elected officials, and you being one for so long, I was going to ask you what advice you have for them, but you just gave a great speech about how important you are.
I'll answer it in a little bit more detail. I do think it's very important that we do everything we can to stop Donald Trump from continuing to abuse his power and use it to destroy basically everything. I mean, he's just a destroyer. That's just kind of what he does. He's a feral beast that doesn't believe in humanity. He is amoral in his approach to life, meaning that he's not guided by any moral justification for anything, which just mostly limits most the work that we just regular human beings do who are challenged. We actually think even when we do something wrong, we go, maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. And the guy is just a destroyer. And I think that we need to stop him because he will not stop unless you stop him. The only way to do that is through electoral politics, because the folks on his side have lost all courage, all sense of anything that's going on. And my expectation is unless you stop him, he won't stop. And right now it's the courts that are doing that. One other way to do that is to make sure that Congress is in somebody else's hands to check his power. And there's great evidence that the American people, independents and Republicans alike, are beginning to get this message. It is middle of April right now. In the time that Donald Trump has been in office, a year and some months now, there have been approximately 295 elections. Democrats have overperformed in 265 of those elections. In the last 30 that we've had, we're 30-0. Now, we can't do that unless Republicans and independents are beginning to say, you know what, I've kind of had enough of this guy. And that thing is going to move into what's going to happen in the congressional races in 2026 on both the Senate and the House side. And so that there'll be some limitation there. But once that election is over, this is what I want to say to the young people. First of all, it would be great for you to be involved, however you can. Some of you think that you can be candidates. That's fantastic. Some of you want to be policy people or staffers or fundraisers. Do something, because doing nothing is not an option, especially in this moment. This is one of the most critical, I think one of the most 5 critical moments in our nation's history. We have come out of the other ones. It's not a fait accompli that we're going to come out of this one. It is not assured at all that our democracy will survive. They survived before because people stood up. There's evidence to suggest that people are not standing up like they should on the Republican side, like the Republicans did for President Nixon when they walked over to the White House and said enough is enough. That's not going to happen with Trump. So it's up to you to be part of the stop brigade. But once that is over, as soon as the midterms end, and we look forward to 2028, it will be the time when our country has its best opportunity to identify what the future of the country is going to look like. And the answer cannot be, or it should not be, we're going to put it back like it was. Because all of us have been part of the last 50 years, which had good things and bad things. And so we ought to do a real deep gut dive on that and just kind of think about what the new possibilities are and what our true values are, what we believe in, and then what the future is going to look like. Because AI is coming. You still have issues with our NATO allies that now don't trust us anymore. You have a lot of division in the country itself, which needs to be healed if we're going to be strong, because the greatest enemy we have is the division in our country. All of our enemies will tell you they fear our military as they should, but that our greatest weakness is the division in America right now. So we have to think about new possibilities, be open to new structures, be open to new partnerships. But the idea here that's the most critical is reaffirming the commitment and the covenant that we are all created equal and that we all come to the table of democracy as equals. That's number one. The second is we are much better together. So notwithstanding our differences, we ought to have those fights. They ought to be settled within the boundaries that the Constitution gave us or within the rule of order. And then when you win, you're kind to the people who lost. And when you lose, you work with the people who won. And you just get better every day. And I think that if you can approach it like that, America will be fine. If we can't find that balance, if we're going to continue to fight with each other, I hate to contemplate, what the next couple of years, but I'd rather dream about the beauty of what could be.
Yeah, well, I love that. It's a great place to end. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've so enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate you very much.
Thanks.
An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. And because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars were used in the making of this podcast.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.